So I got ripped off by a group that operates here on YouTube to the tune of $10,000 or so and a couple of months wasted. And what's worse, they used AI to do it, kind of. More on that later. Now, before you click off, this isn't a request for money, no GoFundMe here, nothing like that. I'm going to be fine. I just passed 100,000 subscribers. Thanks for that, by the way. To those of you that are subscribed, I will do my best to be worthy of your time. Anyway, so things are going fine with me as far as I'm concerned. And just to set your expectations for YouTube drama, I'm not going to be naming the group specifically in this video. This video is about recognizing scams like this and how to avoid them no matter what group is trying to scam you. It wasn't a scam I'd thought about before, although in retrospect, it's an obvious one. And it's one that I'm sure is going to get worse and worse. And it's hard to defend against or to detect for that matter. There really isn't anything to be done now about what happened to me, but I can at least tell you about it so that hopefully you can avoid it. And I'll at least feel like something good came out of my experience. I'll get into plenty of detail about exactly what happened to me in a little while, along with some recommendations about how you might protect yourself and some discussions about the wider societal implications. But first, just so you can decide if you'd care to stick around for the details, let me give you the short version. So there are people out there on YouTube, and I'm sure elsewhere, who are selling information or coaching or courses, but really what they're doing is just charging hundreds or thousands of dollars for them to run ChatGPT and then pass the output on as if it was valuable. So the way I see it, there are three possibilities. Option one, the output of ChatGPT is completely useless for your purposes, in which case you are paying for useless information and you're getting ripped off. Option two, the output of ChatGPT should work for your use case, in which case you should ask ChatGPT yourself and save the money. Or option three, you're working on a project that is so important that you can't afford any mistakes or delays, and so it's worth paying a group that's domain experts to sit between you and the AI and make sure that what comes out matches your requirements. So for example, if you don't know anything about writing secure code and you were going to be getting an application generated by ChatGPT, it might be worth paying someone so that they can make sure that there aren't any security issues with the code before you put it on the internet and get yourself hacked. And in that case, I think it would be the developer's responsibility to disclose to you that they were using ChatGPT and what parts of your deliverable were from them and what parts of deliverable from ChatGPT. And I would argue that there's never a case where it's okay for any vendor to not disclose their use of AI. And if they do hide it, and like me, you don't catch it until it's too late, then you, like me, are probably going to get fucked. This is the Internet of Bugs. My name is Carl. I've been a software professional since the 1980s, and I'm trying to do my part to make the internet a safer, more reliable, and less buggy place, which lately has meant a lot of pushing back against and warning about the dangers of AI. So here's what happened to me. I've been working for a while on creating an online course and a community for software developers to learn how to create their own software as a service businesses, and in the process, learn a whole bunch of skills that are really hard to acquire otherwise. I've done a lot of corporate training over the years, so I feel comfortable with teaching, putting together a curriculum, all that stuff. And of course, I've spent decades building and working with software businesses, so I know what information to put in the course. But I've got no experience with any of the business side of that. I don't know how to deliver such a class over the internet, how to figure out what scope makes sense, what and how to charge for it, what kind of community a class needs, how best to host and manage such a community, and what other best practices I might not know about. It seemed reasonable to me that the best way to learn those things was to take an online class myself, and so I found and signed up for a class on how to package career experience into an online education business. I gave them a lot of money up front and then realized they had no more idea of how to do this than I did. Yeah, well, oops. Now, several wasted months and several $1,000s later, I regret having gotten involved with them at all, but hindsight's 20/20. Now, I'm sure the group that fooled me aren't the only group doing this, and I expect that more and more people are going to be running this scam as time goes on in the online course space, but probably a ton of other spaces as well. So instead of just telling you to avoid a particular channel, I'm just going to teach you how to spot the scam to the extent that you can. And that will hopefully protect you, not just from them, but from other people doing similar things. And I'm expecting that you might need that because one of the core teachings of the group that ripped me off was instruction on how to use AI to rip other people off. Now, they don't say it that way, of course. They talk about how easy it is to use AI to start your own coaching business. But the effect is they're teaching people how to sell ChatGPT output for thousands of dollars. Not only was that group a scam, but they're arguably just a scam factory. So let me zoom out for a couple of minutes. Let's talk about the bigger picture, and then I'll dig more into the details of my experience and what I would recommend that you do differently. One huge problem that AI has started causing for us, for all of us, that we don't talk about much, is the way that AI is messing with our ability to rely on our learned intuition about the effort put into something or the quality of something. Up until the last few years, it was a decent shortcut to estimate the quality of a product or a service by looking at the quality of its presentation, using the layout, the structure, the format as signals to tell you about how much effort was put into the product. It's the proverbial judging a book by its cover, as it were. This loss of signaling regarding quality has happened to us before. Once upon a time, believe it or not, we could make a pretty good guess on how good a video game was going to be based on how good the graphics looked, because games that had the most effort put into their presentations generally also had the most effort put into them overall. Then two things happened. First was that game companies started realizing that if they made their graphics pretty enough, they could get away with skimping on everything else and still make a profit. And the second thing was that third-party game engines like Unreal became commonplace enough that all the games started to look alike regardless of quality. As a result, these days, a lot of the prettiest games are mediocre or worse, and many of the best games don't require high-end graphics hardware at all. And we've lost the ability to estimate how good a game is likely to be by watching the trailers or playing the demos. AI is causing the same problem with things that we buy and subscribe to online, and I expect this is going to be getting worse. It's going to be more and more difficult to tell whether what we're looking at online was produced by a quality organization that cares about their customers and their reputation, or something that just has a polished but AI-created exterior with no depth, reliability, or quality underneath. This same issue is also one of the big problems currently affecting the job market. When every resume looks the same and every cover letter looks the same, it breaks the way that resume screening has been done for years. AI is also complicating the signaling in judging the submission of journal articles, in fake product reviews, and in judging the veracity of fake news. There are a few papers about this I'll link below. The things AIs generate seem perfectly reasonable at first glance, even well-researched and high quality. But in fact, there's no rigor underneath. And as many lawyers are figuring out, often the facts or research the generated output is based on don't exist at all. When that output is given to you or me, though, it's not at all clear whether any relation between the context of that document and our reality exists at all. And that's a problem for those of us who want information from people on the internet and are willing to pay for it. I don't know of a good way to quickly tell whether or not informational or educational materials given to you are just ChatGPT output or not. The AI detector services are notoriously unreliable. But honestly, by the time you've been given the materials and you have the opportunity to look at them, chances are it's already too late because you've already given them money. So let's talk about how you might avoid what happened to me. So step one, in avoiding getting ripped off by paying for someone to prompt ChatGPT for you, is to decide for yourself what being ripped off would mean in your case. Specifically, deciding what things you think AI is appropriate for and what things you don't. If you want to pay someone thousands of dollars to prompt ChatGPT for you, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. It may be worth it to you, and you might not consider it a ripoff, and that's fine, you do you. On the other hand, you might think that any use of AI is inappropriate, in which case it'll be a lot easier for you to decide who you don't want to do business with, although the list of people that are not using AI at all is getting smaller and smaller these days. My recommendation is to take a page from the startup playbook and decide what counts as core business or competitive advantage and what doesn't. In the business world, and especially in the startup world, there are things that companies are expected to keep in-house and things they're encouraged to outsource. For example, lots of small businesses these days outsource functions like benefits and payroll because for most businesses, there's no way doing a better job of payroll will make them any more profitable or any more likely to succeed. On the other hand, if the function in question does have the potential to make the company more successful if it's done well, then they should probably keep it in-house and do it the best they can. Likewise, if you're trying to decide whether or not to do business with someone, the fact that they use AI for things unrelated to the services they are providing to you might not matter to you at all. At least, it doesn't matter to me. For example, if I were going to be paying a company to teach me how to use a new AI-based programming tool, and that company used AI to lay out their website or to create marketing copy text or stock images for their social media posts, that wouldn't bother me at all. On the other hand, if that same company used ChatGPT to create their lesson content for what they were selling to me, then I'd feel ripped off, and I think I'd be justified in feeling that way. Or, for another example, I don't use AI to write my scripts or suggest ideas for my videos on this channel. I mean, I've looked at suggestions that AI makes for video topics, and they're worse than useless because, I only make videos based on my best understanding of, facts and reality. And I expect that you would be upset if I started making videos based on large language model hallucinations, and rightfully so. Also, if what you want is a video like the videos on this channel that were made by AI and have nothing behind them, you can just ask ChatGPT yourself and you don't need me. On the other hand, I do use AI for some things related to this channel. Lately, after I upload a new video, I've started giving the transcript to Gemini and then asking what hashtags and keywords I should put on the video, because otherwise I'd just be guessing because I have no idea. Also, the last few months, I've been paying a service to level and clean up the final audio for each new video right before I uploaded it to YouTube. And I'm pretty sure that service uses AI. I'm assuming that my ability, or lack thereof, to use my old damaged hearing to try to clean up audio is not why you watch my videos. And for those of you who have been watching my content since back when I was trying to use my old damaged hearing to edit my audio, you have my sincere condolences. Anyway, back to me getting ripped off. I didn't think about AI at all before I handed over my money to the group that ripped me off because they had a history on YouTube that went back years before ChatGPT. So I figured that what they were selling also predated ChatGPT. Turns out I was wrong, but let that be a lesson to you. Even established businesses that predate the current AI craze are getting in on the grift. So step 2, now that you've decided what uses of AI you consider unacceptable in someone that you're paying, is to do some research. Look at their website, look at their marketing material, look at their free giveaways that they ask you for your email and get in exchange for. Watch their YouTube videos. If you see mentions of AI, it's probably a bad sign. Well, unless, of course, teaching AI is their core business, in which case things are going to be a little more complicated for you. Also, if they have a long enough track record, take a look at how their post-2022 and recent materials compare to their pre-2022 material. As near as I can tell about the group that got me, they started off years ago as yet another how to grow your social media audience channel. And prior to 2022, there were a few mentions of starting an online course, but only a handful. And then in late 2022, the year that ChatGPT came out, their content started mentioning creating online courses more and more until it was almost all they talked about. I don't know if that was because of ChatGPT, but it seems possible, and it's probably something I should have paid a lot more attention to. The content from that group about how to use social media to sell things, in this case online courses, seemed legitimate, but that wasn't what I needed to know. The content about how to build the course, and most importantly, how to make sure that the course that you're building provides value to your students, to the extent the group talked about that at all, it was just the kind of vague crap you get from ChatGPT. More on that in a bit. So step 3, assuming you didn't see any indication from looking over their online presence that they were just selling chatbot output, is to ask directly. I know asking is uncomfortable, but they're not likely to volunteer that information. Start by asking if they have an AI policy or an FAQ. Ask whether or not they use AI to generate the products or services that you're buying, and if not, ask them if they plan on adding AI to their offerings and ask to get that in writing. And the last part is important. Let me tell you more about what happened with me. I signed up for the service early this year, which is 2025 in case you're watching this later. There was no indication to me that they were repackaging AI at first. There was some text that sounded a little AI-ish in some of the lessons, so I started to get a little suspicious, and then I started using their processes for getting personalized advice and help. Part of their offering, the part that I needed the most, was a customized plan to help each person who paid for their service to get step-by-step instructions tailored to their specific circumstances after they'd answered a few questions. And you had the opportunity to get a couple of different customized plans so you could compare and decide. This customization was one of the biggest selling points to me, but it turned out just to be wrapped chatbot slop. I talked one-on-one with some of the other students who, like me, paid for the class, and we figured out that by getting a second plan and just by rephrasing the answers to the questions that we used for the first plan, we would get wildly different recommendations with completely different pricing guidance, and other core pieces of information would be different too. I explicitly asked them where the information in the individual's reports came from, and I was told that it was a result of their process they'd refined over years of experience or some such nonsense, and they studiously avoided admitting it was just AI. And if that wasn't bad enough, after I'd been in the program for 6 months or so, and despite the fact that one of their selling points when I signed up was lifetime access to their program, the program that I signed up for was discontinued. The new program that replaced it, that they considered the continuation of my lifetime access, was much more limited and even more obviously full of AI slop. And if I wanted the full-blown package, I had to pay an extra $600 a month forever. In fact, they weren't even hiding it anymore. They started talking about their use of AI as if it were a selling point. I guess that might be the selling point for some people, but hopefully if you're watching my channel, you know better by now. Unfortunately for me, they already had my money, and they never actually said that they would not use AI to create the content I was buying, so I didn't think to ask. I have no excuse for not having thought to ask, but I didn't, and I paid the price for it, so don't make my mistake. So step 4 is to figure out what their refund policy is, or how to cancel future payments in the event that you discovered that they're using AI in ways that they didn't disclose. They're likely to balk at this, and as a provider, I get that, but if they insist that you can't get your money back even if they violate their stated AI policy, then it's an indication that they might not be so trustworthy after all. Then, once you have the information from your steps 1 through 4, you hopefully have enough information to make your decision. I strongly advise you not to sign up for any service that refuses to commit to not using AI for their core offering, but it's up to you. At least if you ask, you'll be able to have the relevant information before you make your decision. The most important thing is, I want you, and really everybody, to think about and to ask about what AI output you and they are willing to pay for. That awareness itself will hopefully help a lot of people avoid what happened to me. Best of luck to you all. Thanks for watching. Let's be careful out there.